Machine check. Today we are going to get up close and personal and get the ins and outs of my E36 M3 sedan drift car. Let's go. What are your wheel specs, bro? How much camber are you running? What coilovers are you on? What's up, guys? This is Evan from Item Be an Auto Handler, and today we are gonna take an in-depth look at my drift car. You guys are asking me questions on Instagram about it on a near daily basis, and so let's just do a definitive guide to the E36 M3 grassroots drift car. I'm gonna take you through the top to the bottom. We're gonna look at everything on the car, what makes it cool, why I chose what I chose, and hopefully you guys will be able to figure out what's gonna work for you in building your own drift car at home. So this thing started its life with me about a year and a half ago when I bought a twice totaled rebuilt title Cosmo Schwartz 98 M3 with 195,000 miles up in the Seattle area. This thing had no front end on it. It had had a massive repair in the back. It has quarter panel skins and a trunk lid, and this thing is about as dirty as it comes when it comes to history. But for me, building drift cars, I'm just gonna beat the hell out of them, and I like to buy them cheap and make them super sick. I bought this thing for $7 grand, and before I even got to put one Go Fast part, one piece of suspension on it, it went straight to the frame rack, got straightened out, had a bunch of new panels put on, and I basically brought it back to a 0 point before I started to improve the car. It had 200 PSI compression across the board, a beautiful black interior, no subframe cracks, and the strut towers were in the right places, and so I figured it was the perfect place to start for a drift build. Now, before I even got it going on anything related to drifting, the first thing that I did was I put a nice radiator and fan in the car, and I got it sitting right on some BC extreme low coilovers, 8K in the front and 8K in the back. I know there's a lot of controversy as to what spring rates to run on coilovers. I personally prefer a really soft ride, and so I went with 8K front, 8K rear, and the car feels great. It's reactive to the way that the ground moves, and you're not just riding a skateboard across a gravel parking lot, and the car really does feel really nice to drive, whether you're drifting or you're driving on the street. I think you guys are gonna realize how simple this car really is when we get down to the nitty gritty, and that's one of the great things about an E36 as a drift car, the M3 or the non-M. It really requires very little to make these cars drift well, and unlike other chassis from other manufacturers, you can reuse an absolute ton of BMW parts in order to make this thing a solid track car. With that said, we're not going to be able to get this thing to get lock without an angle kit of some kind, and so I hit up my dudes at Drift HQ, and we ended up installing a CNC 71 angle kit from Poland on the car. I really like that kit because it has indestructible control arms. They use OEM ball joints that you can get out of any control arm anywhere at a parts store nationwide. It has a really nice lock-to-lock feel. It has gray Ackerman and self-steer, and it really makes the car very street drivable, and you don't have to do a lot of steering input when you're in the driver's seat in order to get the car to snap and transition and whatnot. Another great thing about that kit is that it is super affordable. I think it's only like $800 or $900 as compared to other angle kits that are way more expensive, and I feel like the performance gains are somewhat marginal. The car gets great angle, it feels great in drift, and it drives great, and so I'm very happy with it, and I highly recommend it to you guys. I feel like everyone has a different opinion when it comes to how to run bushings on E36 chassis, and it really depends on what type of application you're going to be using your car for. For example, my coupe has all solid everything from the front to the back, but the sedan, I really didn't want to get my teeth rattled out while I was street driving it, and it starts to almost feel like a piece of heavy equipment when you start to replace every rubber bushing in the car for a solid one. So this car has rubber engine mounts, rubber transmission mounts, rubber diff, rubber subframe bushings, and the only solid bushings in the entire car are the front diff bolt and the R-tabs. The rear end is really simple. It is just a welded auto 328 diff, so a 3:9:1 ratio with a solid front diff bolt. It has rear lower adjustable control arms, and it has solid offset R-tabs and DriftTech slotted toe brackets. The toe brackets and offset R-tabs are really important because as you lower an E36, it wants to toe out in the back, and in order to get that predictable toe-in alignment in the rear and below, I recommend using the toe brackets and the offset R-tabs because it gives you a ton of adjustment range, and it will allow you to dial in the car on the alignment rack to your exact specification without being limited by adjustment. Under the hood, this thing has a stock as a Rock S52. It doesn't even have an M50 intake manifold. Although that's great, it's not required with S52, and the car feels really good as is. All that air being passed through the engine is moving through a Pretty Trick exhaust. It's running an S50 B30 stainless Euro header for the Euro M3, a custom 3-inch Y-pipe with a catalytic converter. It's a MagnaFlow high flow cat that I chose just for its sound, and all that connects to a dual resonator, dual muffler, divorced stainless Corsa catback. This exhaust was not cheap, but it actually makes the car sound super good. As you guys know, naturally aspirated 6-cylinder engines don't always sound the best. So getting this thing to sound awesome was really important to me. I am running a Terror tune courtesy of Night Terror on Instagram with a raised RPM to 7,000, a slightly upgraded fuel map, hard cut limiter, and a few other random deletes like the secondary air pump and other smog stuff. That extra 300 RPM really opens up the car's rev range, and you'd be super surprised at how much more legs your car actually ends up with just from that extra 300 RPM. To be honest, it's probably making about 230 horsepower on a good day at the wheels. All of that power is moving through an FX Stage 2 clutch, a cheap clutch on eBay, single mass flywheel with a stock ZF, stock driveline, stock shifter, and stock transmounts. As far as engine cooling goes, I'm just running a basic Mishimoto dual pass radiator and a high output slim fan. I may end up upgrading the fan a little bit in the future, but for a street car, the fan works great. So as far as the on-track performance of this car, I really only had two goals. I wanted it to drive predictably and tire life, tire life, tire life. And so this thing checks both of those boxes. It's not the fastest car on track, but it drives super good, and you can do 20, 30, 40, 50 laps per pair of tires, depending on the track surface and the temperature and what tire you choose. As fun as it is to have some super rocket ship drift car, this thing is not that. I wanted it to look good and drive well and get tire life. If you're just getting into drifting, don't go chasing power, chase tire life, and chase a well set up car. I'm running about 9 degrees of camber in the front and about 3.5 in the rear. I would like to run a little bit less camber in the back, but I like the car to look good, and I want to be able to tuck these enormous wheels that I put on the car. So one of the things that allured me to drifting and made me fall in love with it when I first found out what it was this idea that there were these show quality cars getting chucked into corners door to door. These are cars that would look just as at home at a car show as they do on track, and they're just being driven with reckless abandon by groups of people inches from each other in these huge tandem trains. And so I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but for me, the vehicle aesthetics is just as important as its performance, and so I did not skimp on the aesthetics. Fortunately, another benefit of the E36 chassis is that it needs very little to look super good. This thing is running our full auto handler kit all the way from the front to the back, our lip, skirts, rear bumper cover, front and rear fenders, as well as an HM Sports roof spoiler. It looks absolutely sick. Our kit maintains the classic 90s BMW motorsport heritage vibe, and the car looks absolutely great. Our fenders are about 45 millimeters wider than stock, and that gave me just enough room to shoehorn these 17x10 -5 SSR SP1 wheels I got from 3-Piece US. 3-Piece US re-drilled these to 5x120 for me. It's a square setup all the way around, so it's a 5-inch outer lip on all 4 wheels. When I was running cheaper wheels on this thing, I was running a square set with an equal level of spacers on all 4 corners, so when I decided to build a set of wheels for this car, I just carried that same philosophy and built all 4 to the same size. They're running a 215/40 17 tire in the front and a 235/40 tire in the rear. It's just a slight stagger, and the 215 in the front is still appropriate enough that it's not so stretched that I can't deflate it in the rain. It gives me plenty of clearance lock to lock, and I don't rub fender even though I'm pretty low. I also fabbed up these super cool starboard splitters for the side skirts and front bumper. I just went to my local plastic shop with the dimensions, they cut them to size for me, and I ended up bolting them to the bottom of the skirts and the bumper. I added a little accent strip of yellow duct tape, super simple and easy to maintain, and that just ends up preserving the aero a little bit more at the right height that I'm at, and I don't need to cringe every single time I drop a tire off of a track edge or enter a parking lot, afraid that I'm gonna break my kit in half and then have to pull it all apart and repaint. As far as the interior goes, it is about as simple as it gets. I've got a shirts tucked in steering wheel from Nardi with some nice yellow stitching, a couple of Status seats, also yellow, thank you Status, a stock handbrake. Here's a tip, you can order all of that stuff brand new from BMW and make your handbrake feel like it has 0 miles. I would highly recommend it. The stock handbrake in E36 works great. And besides that, I've got a nice stereo with a Bluetooth head unit, all black, Vader rear seats, and that's about as far as it goes on the interior. I'm not gonna rip everything out of it in order to make it lighter or whatever. I wanted this thing to be comfortable on the street and the track. All right guys, so that is pretty much it. I hope you gleaned a little bit of info on how to build a simple seat time E36 drift car. It's really not rocket science, and I guarantee that if you follow that formula, you will get a car that you can enjoy on the street, on the way to work, and on the weekend with your buddies in tandem at the track. All of our Auto Handler Aero is available on our website, which I will leave in the description of this video, as well as links to all the other parts that I bought from Drift HQ and other retailers that help make building a drift car like this an absolute breeze. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.